The large meeting hall of the Australian palace gleamed under the light of 3 moons. The walls, made of shining blue crystal, caught the light and broke it into thousands of small rainbows. Important people from many planets filled the room. They wore fancy clothes and spoke in quiet voices. This was a big night, the official welcome party for the first human ambassador to the Australian Empire. Ambassador Tay stood alone near a tall window. He was shorter than most Australians, but stood straight and proud. His black formal suit looked plain next to the bright flowing robes of the Australians. Still, he smiled politely when anyone looked his way. It had been 3 years since the peace treaty between humans and the Galactic Confederation, but Tay knew many Australians still looked down on humans. They think we're just smart animals. Tay's assistant had warned him before the party. Be ready for subtle insults. Across the room, Prince Day watched the human with narrow eyes. The tall Australian royal had skin that shimmered with a blue glow, a sign of his pure bloodline. His long fingers tapped against his cup as he spoke to his group of friends. "Look at him," Prince Day said, "standing there like he belongs among us. My father may have signed a peace treaty, but I remember what the humans did in the outer regions." "The war is over, Your Highness," said one advisor carefully. "Wars end. Feelings remain." Prince Day's eyes suddenly lit up with an idea. "I think our human guest needs a proper Australian welcome gift." He turned to a guard. "Bring the scholar Gia, the one who spoke against the Royal Mining Project last month. Bring her here now." 30 minutes later, the crowd went quiet as Prince Day walked to the center of the hall. Everyone turned to watch. The prince raised his hands for attention, though he already had it. "Distinguished guests, royal family, and our new friend from Earth," he said, his voice carrying across the room. "We welcome Ambassador Tay to our capital world. As is our custom, we offer a gift to honor our new diplomatic ties." 2 guards entered, leading a young Australian woman. She walked, with her head down. Her blue skin was darker than the royal family's, and she wore simple clothes without decorations. The guards brought her to stand in front of Prince Day. "This is Gia," the prince announced. "Once a scholar in our great academy, now she will serve as companion to our human guest." He smiled, and his friends behind him tried not to laugh. "Perhaps she can teach him our ways, as she is so fond of new ideas." Whispers spread through the crowd. Everyone knew what this meant. Gia had spoken against royal policies and fallen from favor. Giving her as a gift to the human was a clever insult to both of them. The prince was showing power over Gia, while also treating the human like someone who would not understand the insult. Ambassador Tay did not react right away. He had studied Australian culture for years before taking this job. He knew exactly what Prince Day was doing. This was a test. How would he respond? Tay stepped forward, his face calm. The room grew quiet again. "Your Highness," Tay said, bowing, exactly the right amount for a foreign diplomat, not too deep, not too shallow. "I am honored by your thoughtful gift. On Earth, we value knowledge above all else, so a companion with scholar training is most welcome." Prince Day's smile froze slightly. This was not the confused reaction he had hoped for. Tay turned to Gia and spoke in perfect Australian, surprising many in the room. "I would be honored by your company and wisdom, Scholar Gia, if you are willing." Gia finally looked up. Her eyes, large and deep purple like all Australians, showed surprise. She had expected to be humiliated tonight, not spoken to with respect. She studied the human's face for signs of trick or joke, but found none. I will serve as requested, Ambassador," she said quietly. "Not serve," Tay corrected gently. "Advise. There is much I hope to learn." Prince Day's friends were no longer smiling. The joke had somehow turned around. The prince himself kept his royal composure, but his blue skin darkened slightly around the neck, a sign of anger in Australians. "How gracious of you, Ambassador," Prince Day said. "I hope you find the arrangement educational." He waved his hand, ending the ceremony, and walked away quickly. The crowd broke into loud talking. Many watched as Tay spoke quietly with Gia. No one could hear what they said, but they could see the Australian woman's surprise. Later that night, in the quiet of the human embassy, Ambassador Tay showed Gia to her private room. The embassy was small compared to Australian buildings, but comfortable and designed with both human and Australian needs in mind. "You don't have to stay," Tay said once they were alone. "I understand what happened tonight. I can arrange for you to go wherever you wish." Gia looked around the room, simple but comfortable, with a special sleeping pool that Australians needed for their health. "Where would I go?" she asked. "I spoke against the royal family's new mining plan because it will poison the water of 3 villages. Now I am out of favor. My family cannot help me without risking their own position." She looked at the human carefully. "You knew what the prince was doing?" Tay nodded. "I studied your culture for years. The prince thinks humans are simple and easily fooled." "Why did you accept me then?" Gia asked. "It would have been easier to pretend you didn't understand." Tay smiled. "Because that would have been exactly what he expected. Besides, the royal family just gave me something very valuable without realizing it." "What?" "An honest Australian advisor who isn't afraid to speak truth to power." He looked at her seriously. "Stay as long as you wish. You'll be treated with respect here. If you choose to share your knowledge of Australian culture and politics, I would be grateful. If not, that's your choice." Gia was quiet for a long time. In one night, her life had completely changed. Given as a joke to a foreign species, she now found herself with an unexpected ally. "I will stay," she finally said, "at least for now. And I will tell you truth, Ambassador Tay. Starting with this, you have made an enemy of Prince Day tonight. He will not forget being outsmarted in public." Tay nodded. "I know. But sometimes making the right enemies is as important as making the right friends." Outside the embassy windows, the 3 moons of Australis shone down on the capital city. Neither Tay nor Gia could know that this night, meant as a small political humiliation, would one day change the history of both their peoples forever. 3 months passed since the night of the royal party. The human embassy had settled into a quiet routine. Ambassador Tay spent his days in meetings with Australian officials, working to build trade deals between Earth and the Galactic Confederation. His evenings were often spent in the small garden on the embassy roof. That is where Gia found him today, sitting on a bench and looking at the sunset. The sky of Australis turned deep purple at dusk, with streaks of green where the 3 moons reflected light. "Ambassador," Gia said, carrying a tray with 2 cups. "I brought tea." Tay smiled. "Thank you. And please, when we're not in official meetings, just call me Tay." Gia sat down on the bench, keeping a proper distance. She had stayed at the embassy these past months, slowly growing more comfortable. At first she had been quiet and watchful, expecting some trick. But the human had been nothing but respectful. "The trade minister has agreed to your terms," Gia said, handing him a cup. "This is a big win for Earth." "It's a win for both sides," Tay corrected. "Earth gets new technology, and Australis gets the rare minerals they need." He looked at her. "Your advice on how to approach Minister Sook was perfect. Thank you." Gia looked down at her cup. She was not used to being thanked for her ideas. Before her fall from favor, she had been one of the top scholars at the Australian Science Academy. Her specialty was cultural exchange. But when she had spoken against the royal mining plan, doors had closed quickly. "I received a message today," she said, "from my old teacher at the academy. He says I might be allowed to return now that my name is connected to a successful trade deal." "That's wonderful news," Tay said, though his smile seemed a little forced. "Will you go back?" Gia didn't answer right away. 3 months ago, she would have said yes without thinking. Now she wasn't sure. "I've learned more here than I expected," she admitted. "Humans are not what Australian schools teach." "What do they teach about us?" Tay asked. "That humans are emotional, violent, and simple. That you advanced quickly, but without wisdom." She looked at him directly. "They're wrong." Tay laughed. "Well, some of us are emotional and simple, but not all." He took a sip of his tea. On Earth, many people think Australians are cold and look down on everyone else. Some do, Gia admitted. Like Prince Day. At the mention of the prince, both fell silent. Prince Day had not forgotten his embarrassment. Over the past months, he had made small moves against the human embassy, delays in paperwork, cancelled meetings, and whispered rumors. I think I would like to stay here longer, Gia finally said. There is still much to learn. Tay smiled, and this time it reached his eyes. I would like that very much. Their quiet moment was interrupted by a loud alarm. Red lights began flashing throughout the embassy building. Environmental alert, said a computerized voice. Oxygen levels dropping. All personnel report to emergency stations. Tay jumped up. That's not possible. Our systems were checked yesterday. Gia put down her cup, her large purple eyes narrowing. May I see the control panel? They hurried inside where embassy staff were putting on emergency breathing masks. Tay led Gia to the main control room, where screens showed all the embassy's systems. Oxygen recyclers are shutting down one by one, said the human security officer. We have about 30 minutes of reserve air. This is deliberate, Tay said. We need to evacuate. Wait, Gia said, looking at one screen. These readings are wrong. She pointed to numbers on the display. Australian air systems don't fail in this pattern. Someone has tampered with the sensors, not the actual air supply. Tay looked at her. Are you sure? Yes. In the academy, I studied engineering. 2. This is not a real failure. Her hands moved quickly over the control panel. The system thinks it's failing, but the actual oxygen levels are normal. Can you fix it? Tay asked. I need to reset the main computer, but I need the override code. Tay quickly typed in a long password. The screens flickered, then returned to normal. The Australian Minister of Security is visiting today, Gia said quietly. If the embassy had been evacuated in panic, it would have looked like humans can't even manage basic life support, Tay finished, and the security minister would have seen it all. They looked at each other, understanding growing between them. This was no accident. An hour later, the embassy was calm again. The security minister's visit had gone well, with no hint of the earlier problem. After the minister left, Tay found Gia in the garden again. You saved us from a major embarrassment today, he said, sitting beside her. Thank you. Gia looked troubled. I don't think this was just about embarrassment. The system, tampering was very clever. If the air really had failed with the security minister here, someone wanted to make it look like an accident, Tay said, his voice serious. Maybe even hurt people. Yes. And I can guess who, Gia said. Prince Day. Tay sighed. But we can't prove it. They sat quietly for a moment, watching as the first moon rose over the city. Why did you really stay these past months? Tay asked suddenly. You could have left weeks ago. I made sure you had that choice. Gia looked at her hands. At first, I stayed because I had nowhere else to go. Then I stayed because I was curious about humans. She paused. Now I stay because... Because? Tay prompted. Because I have never met anyone like you, she said simply. Human or Australian. Someone who listens to my ideas, who sees me as a person, not a tool or a problem. Tay moved closer on the bench. Carefully, slowly, he reached out and took her hand. His 5 fingers wrapped around her 4 long blue ones. Among Australians, such touching was rare outside family bonds. On Earth, there's an old saying, Tay said softly. Sometimes we find friendship in the most unexpected places. Is friendship all you feel? Gia asked, her voice barely a whisper. Tay looked into her large purple eyes. No, he admitted. Not anymore. That night marked a change between them. What had begun as a diplomatic insult had grown into respect, then friendship, and now something more. Neither knew what to call it yet, this feeling between 2 people from different worlds. Over the next weeks, they spent more time together, learning about each other's cultures. Tay taught Gia about Earth's music and art. Gia showed Tae's secret. Places in the capital city. Beautiful spots that tourists never saw. They were careful not to show their growing feelings in public. Such a relationship was forbidden by Australian custom. Many humans would not understand it either. But in private moments, they created a small world of their own, where differences of species didn't matter. "Do you ever regret being given to me as a joke gift?" Tae asked one evening as they watched all three moons rise together, a rare and beautiful sight. Gia smiled, her blue skin glowing softly in the moonlight. "Prince Dae thought he was punishing both of us. Instead, he gave us a gift he can never take back." "What gift is that?" Tae asked. "The chance to see beyond what we were taught," Gia said, "to find something new." As their hands linked again, neither could know that their unlikely alliance would soon face its greatest test, or that their private happiness would soon become the center of a galactic storm. 1 year had passed since Gia first came to the human embassy. The capital city of Australis was preparing for the Festival of Three Moons, a time when all three moons aligned in the night sky. Streets were decorated with glowing blue lights, and people seemed happier than usual. Inside the human embassy, however, the mood was very different. Gia sat on the edge of her sleeping pool, her blue hands trembling as she read the medical report again. The words didn't change no matter how many times she looked at them. Confirmed, early-stage pregnancy, genetic mix, Australian and human. It was impossible. Everyone knew humans and Australians could not have children together. Their biology was too different. Yet here was proof that everyone was wrong. The door slid open and Tae walked in. His face showed worry. "Are you okay? You missed our meeting with the trade minister." Gia looked up, her large purple eyes filled with confusion and fear. "I don't understand how this happened," she said, handing him the report. "It's supposed to be impossible." Tae read the report, his eyes growing wider with each word. He sat down beside her, his hand finding hers. "Are you sure it's correct?" "I ran the test 3 times, Gia said. "I feel the changes in my body too. I am carrying a child." "Our child." Tae was quiet for a long moment. Then a slow smile spread across his face. "Our child," he repeated softly. "Gia, this is amazing." "It's dangerous," she corrected. "No one has ever seen an Australian human child before. What if there are problems? What if the baby is sick? What if I can't carry it safely?" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "And what will people say? What will they do to us? To the child?" Tae's smile faded as he considered her words. Their relationship had remained private these past months. Only a few trusted staff at the embassy knew. Among Australians, such a relationship was seen as shameful. Many humans would not understand either. "We will figure this out," Tae promised. "First, we need better medical advice. I know a doctor at the embassy who can help." But they didn't get the chance to see the doctor. That evening, a message arrived from the royal palace. Prince Dae, now Emperor Dae after his father's recent death, requested Gia's presence immediately. "How does he know?" Gia asked, her skin turning a pale blue with fear. "The medical system," Tae realized. "All Australian medical reports are sent to the central database. Someone at the palace must have seen it." "I have to go," Gia said. "Refusing the emperor is a crime." Tae shook his head. "It's a trap. You know how Dae feels about humans. About me. If he knows about the baby." "What choice do I have?" Gia asked. "We leave," Tae said simply. "Tonight, a human ship is departing for Earth in 3 hours. We'll be on it." Gia stared at him. "Leave Australis? I've never left my world. It's not safe here anymore." Tae took her hands. "I know it's a lot to ask, but I think it's our only choice if we want to protect our child." Gia closed her eyes thinking. When she opened them, there was new determination in her face. What do we need to do? 3 hours was not much time. They packed only what they could carry in small bags. Tae contacted his most trusted staff member, explaining only that there was an emergency and they needed to leave quickly. Just as they were about to head to the spaceport, Jia's communication device chimed. A message appeared on the screen. The Emperor knows you are trying to leave. The spaceport is being watched. Use the old service tunnel near the embassy. A friend will be waiting with transport. Who sent this? Tay asked. Minister Suk, Jia said, surprised. The one I helped you make the trade deal with. Can we trust her? I think so. She was my teacher before I joined the academy. They had no better options. Following Minister Suk's instructions, they slipped out of the embassy through a back entrance. The night was dark, with clouds covering the moons. They moved quickly through empty streets until they reached an old building that looked abandoned. A door slid open as they approached. Minister Suk stood there wearing a plain dark robe instead of her usual official clothes. Quickly, she said. There isn't much time. Inside, she led them down a long stairway to an underground tunnel. This was built before the last war, she explained. It leads directly to the spaceport service area. Why are you helping us? Tay asked. Minister Suk looked at Jia. Because what is happening is wrong. Because Jia was my best student, and because your child could change everything we think we know about our two species. So you know, Jia said quietly. Yes. I saw the medical report before the Emperor did. I deleted it from the main system, but someone had already made a copy. She handed them a small device. This contains all the medical information I could gather about human and Australian biology. It might help the doctors on Earth. They followed the tunnel for what seemed like hours. Finally, they reached a door that led to the busy service area of the spaceport. Workers moved around, loading cargo onto ships. No one paid attention to them as Minister Suk led them to a small side entrance of the main terminal. Your ship leaves from Dock 12, she said. I've arranged diplomatic clearance. No questions will be asked. Jia hugged her old teacher. Thank you. I don't know if I'll ever see Australis again. You will, Minister Suk said. Things will change. They must change. She looked at Tay. Take care of her. What grows inside her is more important than either of you know. They made it to the ship just as boarding was finishing. Tay's diplomatic status got them on board without issues. As the ship rose from the spaceport, Jia watched through a small window as her home world grew smaller and smaller. I'm sorry you had to leave everything behind, Tay said softly. Jia placed a hand on her stomach. Not everything, she said. And we had no choice. Emperor Day would have taken the baby, used it for political power or worse. The ship jumped to faster-than-light speed, the stars blurring around them. Jia felt a strange flutter in her body. The first movement of the impossible child growing inside her. What will happen on Earth? She asked. Will your people accept me? Accept us? Some will, some won't, Tay said honestly. But Earth has better medical facilities and laws that will protect us, protect our child. Jia leaned against him, suddenly tired. The stress of their escape, the worry about the baby, the sadness of leaving her world. It all caught up with her at once. Rest, Tay said, putting an arm around her shoulders. We have 2 weeks until we reach Earth. As Jia drifted to sleep, she didn't know that across the galaxy, Emperor Dai was in a rage. His guards had reached the spaceport too late. The human ship was gone, and with it the greatest scientific discovery in Australian history. Find them, the Emperor commanded. Send ships. I want that woman and her abomination brought back. Now. But the human ship had vanished into the vastness of space, carrying with it a miracle that would soon change the future of 2 worlds. The human city of New Seoul glowed with 1,000 lights as night fell. Unlike the blue crystal buildings of Australis, Earth cities were built of concrete, glass, and steel. Cars moved along streets in orderly lines, while people walked on sidewalks, below tall buildings that reached toward the sky. In one of these buildings, the Central Medical Research Center, Jia sat nervously on an examination table. 3 months had passed since she and Tay had escaped from Australis. Her stomach was now visibly rounded, and she felt the baby move several times each day. Dr. Kim, a kind woman with gray hair and gentle hands, studied the screen of a medical scanner. This was Jia's weekly checkup. Ever since arriving on Earth, she had been under the care of Earth's top medical experts. "How is the baby?" Gia asked. Though she had learned to speak human languages quickly, her voice still had the musical quality of Australians. Dr. Kim smiled. "Growing perfectly. All signs are normal." She turned the screen so Gia could see. "Look, you can see the baby's face, clearly now." On the screen was a small face with features that were a perfect mix of human and Australian. The skin had a very light blue tone. The eyes were larger than a human baby's but smaller than an Australian's. 5 tiny fingers moved on each hand, not 4 as Australians had. "Amazing," Dr. Kim said softly. "The first human Australian child, a miracle of biology." The door opened, and Tay walked in. He had been in meetings all morning with Earth government officials. His face looked tired, but his eyes brightened when he saw Gia. "How are my 2 favorite people in the galaxy?" he asked, coming to Gia's side. "We are well," Gia said, taking his hand. "Dr. Kim says the baby is growing normally." "Better than normally," Dr. Kim corrected. "This child is remarkable. The genetics team wants to meet with you both this afternoon. They've made some important discoveries." Later that day, Gia and Tay sat in a conference room with 5 human scientists. Screens on the walls showed complicated genetic charts and data. The lead scientist, Dr. Park, stood to speak. "What we've discovered is nothing short of revolutionary," he said. "Your child's DNA contains unique combinations we've never seen before. The human and Australian genetic material has merged in ways we thought impossible." "Is that dangerous?" Tay asked, squeezing Gia's hand under the table. "Quite the opposite," Dr. Park said. "Your baby shows enhanced immune response, improved cellular repair, and several other beneficial adaptations. Most importantly, we've identified a key genetic sequence that could lead to treatments for diseases that affect both humans and Australians." One of the other scientists spoke up. "If you allow us to continue our research using just small samples from the amniotic fluid, we believe we could develop new medicines that would save millions of lives." Gia looked at the scientists with wonder. "Our baby could help so many people?" "Yes," Dr. Park nodded. "This is the greatest breakthrough in medical science in decades." As they left the meeting, Tay and Gia walked slowly through the hospital gardens. The air was cool, and earthbirds sang in trees that were very different from Australian plants. "So much has changed," Gia said, looking up at the single moon of Earth. "1 year ago, I was just a disgraced scholar given as a joke gift. Now I carry a child that could change medicine forever." Tay put his arm around her shoulders. "Are you happy here? I know Earth must seem strange to you." "At first it was hard," Gia admitted. "The gravity feels too strong. The air smells different, but—" She placed a hand on her stomach. "I have found good things here too. Your people have been kinder than I expected." Not everyone had been kind, of course. When news of their relationship and the pregnancy had become public, there had been protests. Some humans thought relationships between species were wrong. Others feared what the child might mean for the future. But the government had protected them, and many more people had shown support than anger. "Tay," Gia said suddenly, stopping on the path. "I just felt something strange." "The baby?" "No, it was like—" She winced, putting both hands on her belly. "Something is wrong." Tay called for help immediately. Within minutes, Gia was back in the medical center with Dr. Kim and her team working quickly around her. Monitors showed the baby's heartbeat faster than normal. "The placental connection is weakening," Dr. Kim said, her voice tense. "The baby is in distress." "Save them," Tay pleaded. "Do whatever you need to do." Dr. Kim looked at him seriously. "We need to try an emergency procedure. It's experimental, but it's the best chance for both Gia and the baby." "Do it," Gia said through pain. "Please." For the next 6 hours, Tay waited outside the operating room. He called Minister Sook on Australis using a secure channel, telling her what was happening. She provided additional information about Australian biology that might help the doctors. Finally, Dr. Kim emerged, looking tired but smiling. "They're both stable," she said. We had to create an artificial support system that combines elements of both human and Australian medical technology. Gia will need to stay here under constant monitoring until the birth. Can I see her? Tay asked. Gia was awake when he entered her room. She looked pale, but her eyes were clear. The doctors say I must stay here now, she said. The baby is growing too quickly for my body to support naturally. They've connected me to machines that will help. Tay sat beside her bed. I was so scared. I was too, Gia admitted. But now I'm just thankful. If this had happened on Australis, you would have died, a new voice said. They turned to see an Australian standing in the doorway. It was Minister Sook, looking tired from long space travel. Minister Sook, Gia said in surprise. How are you here? I came as soon as I received Tay's message, Minister Sook said, coming into the room. I brought Australian medical equipment that might help, and information. What information? Tay asked. Minister Sook's face grew serious. Emperor Day has sent ships to find you. They don't know exactly where you are yet, but they are searching Earth cities. Why is he so determined to find us? Gia asked. Because of what I discovered before I left. Minister Sook lowered her voice. Gia, do you remember the ancient royal bloodline tests you studied at the academy? Yes, they show genetic links to the original royal family. I ran your genetic profile against the royal database. Minister Sook looked at them both. Gia, you are a direct descendant of the First Empire's royal family, a branch that was thought to have died out generations ago. Gia and Tay stared at her in shock. That means, Tay began. Your child carries royal blood, Minister Sook finished. And by the oldest laws of Australis, which have never been changed, that gives your baby a claim to the throne. Outside the medical center, Earth continued its normal routines. People went to work, children played in parks, and life moved forward. None of them knew that in one room of one building, 3 people were discussing a child who would one day change the course of 2 civilizations. 5 years had passed since the birth of Hannah, the first child of human and Australian parents. The morning sun shone through the windows of a comfortable house on the outskirts of New Seoul. Inside, Tay watched as his daughter practiced writing. In both human and Australian languages, Hannah was unlike any child who had come before her. Her skin had a light blue glow that became brighter when she was happy. Her eyes were larger than human eyes but smaller than Australian eyes, and shone with a deep purple color. She had 5 fingers like a human, but they were longer like an Australian's. Her mind was quick, learning things faster than children of either species. Daddy, look, Hannah said, holding up her writing tablet. I finished all the lessons. That's wonderful, Tay said, smiling at his daughter. Your mother will be very proud when she gets home. As if on cue, the front door opened and Gia walked in. She wore Earth clothes now, though with some Australian designs added. After 5 years on Earth, she moved easily in the stronger gravity. How are my 2 favorite people in the galaxy? She asked, using the phrase Tay often said to them. Hannah ran to her mother, showing her the completed lessons. Gia knelt down to hug her daughter, her face glowing with pride. Minister Sook sent a message, Gia said to Tay when Hannah went to get her toys. She'll be arriving tomorrow with news from Australis. Tay nodded. Over the years, Minister Sook had become their main link to Australis. She visited Earth every few months, bringing news and helping Earth scientists understand Australian biology better. Thanks to genetic samples from Hannah, doctors had created new medicines that could treat diseases in both species. Do you think Emperor Day is still looking for us? Tay asked quietly. Always, Gia replied. But Earth's government has protected us well. The next day, Minister Sook arrived at their home. She looked tired from the long journey, but smiled warmly when Hannah ran to greet her. Little princess, Minister Sook said, using the nickname she had given Hannah. You grow more beautiful each time I see you. After Hannah went to play in the garden, Minister Sook's face became serious. I bring important news, she said. Emperor Day is dead. Tay and Gia looked at each other in shock. How? Gia asked. A rare disease that affects only the royal bloodline, Minister Sook explained. He had no children, No direct heirs. What happens now? Tay asked. The Council of Elders will meet to choose a new ruler, Minister Suk said. But before he died, I showed the Emperor the medical records from Earth. The reports about how Hana's genetic material has helped create medicines that have saved thousands of Australian lives. Did it change his mind about us? Jia asked. Not entirely, but it made him think. Minister Suk looked toward the garden where Hana played. He admitted in his final days that perhaps the joining of our species was not the disaster he had feared. Minister Suk pulled out a small device and placed it on the table. This contains official genetic records proving Hana's royal bloodline. I have presented copies to the Council of Elders. They know about her now. Why would you do that? Tay asked, suddenly worried. It could put her in danger. Because our world is changing, Minister Suk said. Many Australians have seen the benefits of working with humans. The medicines developed from Hana's genetics have saved lives. The old prejudices are fading. She looked at them directly. The council has requested that you return to Australis with Hana. Return? Jia whispered. After all this time? They wish to meet the child, Minister Suk said, and to consider her claim to the throne. Tay stood up, shaking his head. She's just a child. Our child. Not a political tool. I understand your concerns, Minister Suk said gently. But consider what this could mean. A ruler with both human and Australian heritage could unite our peoples in ways we never imagined. The first true bridge between our worlds. Later that night, after Minister Suk had gone and Hana was asleep, Tay and Jia sat in their garden under Earth's single moon. What should we do? Jia asked. I never thought we could return to Australis. Is it what you want? Tay asked. To go back? Jia was quiet for a long time. Sometimes I miss it. The light of 3 moons, the crystal cities, the sound of Australian music. She looked at their house. But Earth is Hana's home. It's our home now too. We don't have to decide tonight, Tay said, taking her hand. 3 weeks later, a large ship from Australis landed at the main spaceport in New Seoul. It carried not just Minister Suk, but 3 members of the Australian Council of Elders. They came to meet Hana. The meeting took place in a secure room at the Earth Government building. Hana, dressed in clothes that combined Earth and Australian styles, sat between her parents as the elders entered. The oldest elder, his blue skin faded with age, approached Hana and bowed slightly. Child of 2 worlds, he said in formal Australian. We have come a long way to meet you. Hana, who had been taught Australian customs by her mother, stood and returned the bow exactly as a royal child would. I am honored by your presence, elder, she replied in perfect Australian. The elder's eyes widened in surprise. Then, slowly, he smiled. The other elders exchanged looks of approval. For the next 2 hours, the elders spoke with Hana, asking her questions about her life, her learning, and her understanding of both worlds. Hana answered with the directness of a child but the wisdom of someone much older. At the end of the meeting, the lead elder turned to Tay and Jia. We came expecting to find a curiosity, he said. Instead, we have found a bridge between our peoples. A child who truly belongs to both worlds. What happens now? Tay asked. We invite you all to return to Australis, the elder said. Not as subjects, but as honored guests. The child should know both her worlds. And the throne? Jia asked. She has a legitimate claim, the elder admitted. By our oldest laws, she is of royal blood. But she is young. There is time to decide such things. For now, let her learn our ways as she has learned Earth's. 6 months later, a ship landed on Australis carrying Tai, Jia, and Hana. They stepped out onto the soil of a world that had once rejected them, but now welcomed them with official honors. As they were taken to their new home in the capital city, Hana looked up at the 3 moons of Australis for the first time. Her skin glowed brighter than ever before. Look, Daddy, she said, pointing to the sky. 3 moons, just like in Mommy's stories. Tay lifted his daughter onto his shoulders, so she could see better. Behind them, Gia watched with tears in her eyes. Never could she have imagined on that night when she was given as a joke gift to a human that it would lead to this moment. News of their return spread quickly across Australis and back to Earth. The child of two worlds had come home to her second world. What had begun as a cruel jest had become the foundation for a new understanding between two species that had once looked at each other with suspicion. And somewhere in the great palace, the spirit of Emperor Day might have watched in disbelief, as his mean-spirited joke became the greatest gift the galaxy had ever received.